after 13 years, 2 children, ended up in divorce, and it was quite the nasty divorce. It just about took me out, and the devil comes in and says, well, you can't be used. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're tarnished. You're dirty. You're useless. You can't be used of the Lord. Such a lie from the pits of hell, because God says in his word that he can take what's bad and turn it into good. And he will take the ashes and turn them into gold.
Welcome to Witness the Wonder. I'm your host, Christina Smith. Today's guest is Bev McCann. Bev, I'd love to begin by having you share a little bit about how God first called you into ministry.
Wow. Thank you, Christina. It's so good to be with you today. I was first called into ministry when I was very young. Actually, it was at junior camp. I was probably about 13. I felt like the Lord was calling me to work, in the ministry. And at the time I thought, man, that's just me, But as life progressed, I ended up working with kids, junior kids and youth kids, all the way. My gosh, that was like a long time ago, but we won't go into how many years that was. That was a long
That's
time
okay.
ago. When I was 17, I started working with the girls clubs in the churches. So the Lord called me when I was probably about 12 or 13. I remember telling my junior leader at the time that I felt like God had called me to work with the kids and in ministry. And she was so excited. She encouraged me my entire life. So that's when I first started working with kids when I was 17. And that was like, well, you're a kid yourself. Well, I was married at 17.
So did you always sing when you were growing up?
Actually, no. If people would have heard me sing when I was between 13 and 16, they would have been, there's no way she could sing. I have a recording of myself actually with my dad, and we're singing in our living room. And I was like, man, those ladies at church told me a story. They told me I could sing. I don't know what they were thinking. It had to get translated somewhere from me through the Holy Spirit to their ears, because I listened to it and I didn't get that feeling. I always wanted to sing, and I loved singing. My dad sang. It came from a family that sang, and so I had the desire to sing, but I didn't always have the ability to sing to where it would have gotten me where I am today. So God just brought that anointing in, and I'm very thankful for that. When the Lord puts something on our hearts, I really truly believe he wants to see how much we really desire that gift, if we're willing to work at that gift, if we're really willing to put in the effort to craft that, and how much are you willing to let the Lord do in your life? And that's, I think, a lot of it. God calls all of us to do his work, all of us to be a disciple of him. And it's up to us to be prepared to do those things.
Looking back now at all of that, those early years, can you see glimpses of how God was preparing you for what you're doing today?
I can. It's pretty interesting as I look back over the years of my life. And when I was young, I mean, we sang all the time. When we were kids, we would pretend to have church. And one of my friends, he was the preacher, and another one was one of the ladies that always shouted in church or whatever. Another one was this, and we sang, and we did all the things. We had it all planned out. So as we did that, and we were playing church, but I think that prepared for what God was just instilling in all of us. One of the gals that I grew up with, she ended up singing in a group for a while and playing, and I'm out here singing and ministering her and speaking at women's events and teaching, the youth and girls. I have a heart to try and help them understand who they are in the Lord and what they can do, and be proud of who God made them. And so doing all the things that I've done, working with the juniors, working with the youth, working, and on the praise team, and then, just serving, cleaning the toilets, it didn't matter. I've done all these things that the Lord has put in our hands to do. And when we do that with a joyful heart, or with the heart of serving, that's where God blesses and he brings other things to fruition. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Bible says that if we're faithful over little, he'll make
Hmm.
us rulers over much. I want to back up here because you did mention that you were married at 17. So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I, I can.
Okay.
Uh, I did get married at 17 and totally in love, thought everything was wonderful and I was going to be married forever. And 13 years later, I went through a horrible divorce and thought that I thought my life was over. And I never, ever thought that would happen to me. My parents were married forever. If you want to know about a perfect home, as perfect as possible, I think I was blessed with that. My mom and dad never fought. I mean, you would hear my dad say, now, Mama, or now, Edna, or she would say, now, Ray, and that'd be about the end of it. And you never heard a harsh word, any of that between them. We had food on the table. We had a roof over our head. I had a wonderful childhood. So didn't expect my life to be any different. You think, well, this is how life is supposed to be. I was naive enough to know or think that there was no, I'm not going to have any trouble. But that wasn't the case. And so after 13 years, 2 children, ended up in divorce. And it was quite the nasty divorce. It just about took me out. And the devil comes in and says, well, you can't be used. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're tarnished. You're dirty. You're useless. You can't be used of the Lord. Such a lie from the pits of hell. Because God says in his word that he can take what's bad and turn it into good. And will take the ashes and turn them into gold. He can do the things that we cannot do. God promises us to take us as we are and cleanse our lives and put us on the right path and to set us into the places that he has desired for us. He'll set us from the pits and put us on the rock. He'll set us on the mountaintop. He'll put us in a place to where we will grow and thrive with him if we just stick with him. If we don't let go of him, he will take us to where we need to go. I remember one day driving down the road, and I can tell you exactly where I was on the highway. I was going down 99 in California, and the Lord just spoke to me and says, don't worry about all of this. I am going to it's like Job. And I thought, like Job? I don't want to go through what Job went through, but it wasn't like all of those things, but it was bad. And I didn't realize how bad it was going to get. But God took those things and he says, what the devil is trying to destroy, I will take and give back to you 100-fold. And I thought, okay, God, I'll trust you. I'm trusting you. I don't know how or what's going to happen. I was a mess. I got married young, so I was still young. Growing up, when you got divorced, you couldn't get remarried, as I was told. But that wasn't necessarily the case either, due to the circumstances. I had wonderful pastors that walked through the path with me, and I fell in love again. And God brought love back in my life. And we've been married 34 years. And you know him. You've
Yeah,
met my husband.
I met Dave.
And yes, and he is a awesome guy and we've had a wonderful marriage. We're both healthy, so hopefully we'll have many more years. So when the devil tells you you can't do something or you're not going to be used, he's lying. He has no control over that because God has control. When we have our life in the palm of God's hands, when we give up our will and let the Lord's will work in our life, he has control of what goes on in our life. He has control of the destination. We have to do our part, don't get me wrong, but he knows the destination that we are going to end up in.
So he walked you through the restoration process, and he brought your pastors in your path to do that. You brought up Dave. Let's talk about Dave. How did he come into your life? I want to know how God put you back together and where Dave
Okay.
came into the mix of that.
Well, my divorce was a 3-year process. As I was walking through this, and I thought I was never going to find love again. I'm not going to go to the bars. I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go there because I don't do that stuff. So where in the world, it wasn't like you had like online dating back then. I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to meet somebody? Dave had come to the church. I had left the church that I had grown up in and went to a different church in the process of my healing. And my daughter and son would go to church with my mom and dad. Um, and for Sunday night because all their friends were there for their whole life. So they would go back on Sunday nights. And then after a certain period of time, I felt like, okay, I could go back. So I went back to my home church, which was wonderful. And there's Dave. He's sitting at the back running sound. And I'm like, who is this guy? But my mom had said, this lovely guy named Dave is, come in. He's in the Air Force. And because I'd hear Rachel, my daughter, she'd say, oh, my friend Dave. And I'm like, Mom, who is this Dave? And she's, oh, he's this nice young guy. That's where I first heard about him. I wasn't in the place of even thinking that direction. There was a few other people that were thinking that direction. There's one guy, his name was Brother Fisk in our church. He was back in the background trying to put us together. I had no idea whatsoever. So he was talking to Dave on the other side, said, oh, Bev is single. You should talk to her. You should take her out. So anyway, I didn't know all that was going on till later. He ended up being in our wedding because he was very instrumental of putting us together. And that's how, we met, was at church. So God brought this guy in from the Air Force running sound at our home church. But my mom was comfortable with him and my dad knew who he was, and so he
And
had
your
been going
kids?
there and the kids knew who he was. So it was kind of interesting how God put all that together.
You were like the last one involved in this whole process, it sounds
I
like.
was. I was. I truly was. I remember uh, we had gone, everybody back then, we would go out to either Taco Bell or Carl's Jr.'s or something for after church. We'd go like Pizzavilla sometimes too, or wherever, we had a lot of little places that would go Sunday nights.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'd go out. And one night he says, well, do you want to go, wherever? And we were talking at the table. It was kind of funny. Everybody was around the table. And he said something. And I said, well, I have to be very careful who I talk to or if I go out. I'm just don't think I'm ready for that. And he was like, okay. And he kind of stepped back. And it was just kind of funny because I was like, if you're friends with this person, I have to be very careful because I can't cross that line, due to all the things that had taken place. And he said, I'm not friends with them. And I was like, I thought you were friends with them. So anyway, it's kind of funny. The circumstances at the time, I had to have a line in the sand that I could not go uh, to that area of space because it would be detrimental to my future. It was a mess at the time, but God took all of the mess and turned it into a good thing of 34 years of marriage.
Well, that's amazing. Did you and Dave have kids too?
We adopted a little girl. Her name's Candace, and she's 29 this year.
Well, that's beautiful. I love seeing how God restores. He takes those difficult seasons of our life and he turns them into something beautiful, like you said, that from
He
ashes
does.
to beauty. And you mentioned you really felt discouraged and disqualified. For if there's someone watching that maybe has that same feeling that they feel disqualified because of what they've walked through, maybe it wasn't divorce, maybe it was another area of their life where they failed. What encouragement would you share with them?
You didn't go through what you went through for nothing. You can help others. If I had not gone through a divorce, I could not help others that have gone through it or that are going through it, which God has put me in the place of that. If I had not walked through some of the other things that has taken place, I would not be able to minister with empathy to those areas of life. So go in the Bible and read the stories. He didn't use the perfect people. God used broken people. And he still does that today. And are we perfect? No, not in the least. So don't think that, oh, Bev's got it all together. She's perfect because she's not. Bev still battles certain things. Bev still battles hard times at, different times and different things in life. But do I always do things right and perfect? No, I'm not perfect. But I am forgiven and I walk in the grace of the Lord. Would you do the same? God doesn't love me any more than he loves you. When we make mistakes, I know people that have been on drugs and God has delivered them and they're walking in freedom today, but they can identify and they go back now after years free from drugs and addictions. They go back and they minister and touch the hearts and lives of the people that are in that situation. And they're helping bring people out of that. You may be going through a divorce or you may have gone through any of those things, but God says he can restore and he takes the broken and he brings back and he puts the pieces back together. He says, I'm the potter, we're the clay. in Isaiah, he says, let me take you and mold you and make you into what you need to be. And that's what he does every day of our life. When we get a crack, when we mess up, and we can go back to the Father and say, God, just fix me. You're the only one that can fix. I have written some songs. All the songs I've written are about things that I've gone through in life or things that I faced in life. And when you are broken and you don't know where to turn and you turn to Jesus, that is where you're going to find that you realize, why did I wait so long to turn to God? Why am I fighting all these years? Why have I fought to have the peace of God? Because it's peace that passes all understanding. The peace of God that no one can touch. No one in this world can bring the peace that God brings. And he's the only one that can fix the broken heart. There's not a surgeon. There's not a psychologist. There's nobody in this world that can fix a broken heart like God can. If you have been deceived, many people are deceived. And you think, man, I thought I had a good discerning spirit. Well, that discerning spirit in my life has been tested over the last, I would say, 5 years. And I'm like, okay, God, I thought I was pretty good at, the discerning part, but man, I think I've fallen off the cliff because I can't trust anybody. And you may feel like that. But you know what? God will restore that, and he will bring certain people in your life that you can trust. But what he wants to teach you is not to trust people, but to trust him. We make decisions. You're going to pay consequences for those decisions. And people say, well, it's not my fault. I was this or that happened to me. No, stop and take a step back and say, you know what? I made that decision. I made that choice, and I'm going to have to pay that consequence. However, through God's grace, I can change. Through God's grace, I can be better. Through God's grace, I can be set free and live in victory and not make that mistake again. And that's where we have to go. And that's what I have to do every day. Like, okay, God, I blew it. Help me, not to do that again. And he does every day, but we have to be able to trust him and know that he loves us enough to do that.
Yeah, that's so true. I want to say amen. I like you're in there when you were talking. I was like, amen. Because honestly, there's been times in my life where I didn't even trust myself. I had to trust God. I didn't trust my own decisions and my own choices. I'm like, God, you're just gonna have to lead me and guide me because I don't know right now which way's up or down in this season of my life. But you do. You know the right path. And that's so good. It's such good advice. So listen to Beth. My interviews are split into 2 parts for TV, but on Patreon, you get the full uncut story before anyone else. Visit patreon.com/witness the wonder to become a member today. We would love to have you part of our community. So let's transition a little bit to your music. Somewhere along the way, music became a priority and you began to do that as a career.
Yes.
Walk us through that and tell us how that came about.
Well, okay. As we talked about in my earlier days, I would try and sing, and I just always loved it. I always dreamed about traveling and singing and all of that. And I took lessons on the piano a short time, and I wanted to play chords and stuff like that. And my piano teacher, she did not want me to do that. She wanted me to play what she gave me to practice. And so I got in trouble a little bit, but I did start very young at that. And I always had the desire to sing and play and do all these things. And my dad sang and played the guitar and my whole life. And I listened to him play, and he had the most beautiful tenor voice. And it was just phenomenal. But so anyway, as I got older, I sang in the worship team at church, and I did that for a long time. And when we moved from California into Arizona, that was after everything, after the divorce, Dave and I got married and everything. And I started writing all of a sudden. These songs started coming to me, and I was like, huh, this is so cool. I've always wanted and always tried to write, but I could never write. So I wrote a couple of songs, and it was interesting because one of the songs I just actually, okay, this is the funny part and how God sometimes works. We think it should just be like a snap, we do this and then we think it's going to happen right away. But God's plan is so different than ours. I wrote this song back, oh my gosh, back 93 or 4, probably 94, somewhere around there, 94, 95. Anyway, wrote this song called Thunder. I was in the car with about 20 teenagers because Dave and I were youth pastors and we had taken the youth from Arizona to Great America. So here I am driving across the desert, thundering and lightning. Oh my gosh, beautiful storm, beautiful storm. And I'm driving one of the vans all the way across the desert, and all of a sudden the song starts coming to me. God's not always in the thunder. Oh, he's not always in the lightning, not always in the thunder. You just have to hear the still small voice. And oh my gosh, I could not wait to get home. My foot probably got a little heavier as I got down the road. That song kept going through me and I had to write it down. I was like, okay, guys, write this song down. We got to write this down. But it was so exciting because that song started just coming out of watching the storm and the lightning and the crashing and all of that. It was just amazing how God brought that song about. That was a long time ago. I didn't record it until last year. So that's been almost 30 years since I wrote that song than when I recorded it.
So was that your first song that you wrote?
It was one of the first ones.
One of the first
And
songs, and you're just now putting it on an
God
album.
God's Love was my very first song. And I wrote that. And around the same time, I started writing songs. It was so amazing. I wrote like 10 songs. And there was this thing, a group that came through and they were announcing a contest. And I thought, I've never done that before. I'll try it. So I entered in and I went and I performed for this group and I was picked. And my cousin went with me and Karen and I went to Tennessee. And this was like my first trip ever because I'd never traveled, never had any money, and I really didn't have money to do it this time. All the youth at church, it was so funny. They all got together and went, we can do a car wash. We'll do this, we do this. So we did car washes to raise money to get me back to Nashville for this contest. We got back here and we did the contest and I won. I mean, I didn't win the contest, but I won a package. And the guy, he wanted me to do this. But the thing was, it was going to cost another $4,000 or something at the time. I barely made it to Nashville. I didn't know how I was going to pay the other part. But at the time, God shut that door. And I was so heartbroken. I was like, oh my gosh, you brought me all this way. How many times have we done that? Lord, did you bring me all this way just to let me down? No, he didn't. And what he did was prepare me for where I'm at today. That's the amazing part. I was offered something, but it wasn't the right time. So we have to be willing to step back and say, okay, God, it's not the right time. You'll open the door. So came back home, continued working the church, continued writing songs, actually. Then my cousin that went with me to Tennessee, she was at church one night and this group came through their church and he was a producer. She says, oh, you need to talk to my cousin, blah, 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 blah. And so my phone rings and it's the producer and he says, hey, your cousin Karen told me about you. So that opened that door to bring me back to Nashville and he paid for it. I mean, I had to pay part of it, but he paid a lot more than I did. I thought that was so funny how God works. If it wouldn't have been for him, I would not be where I'm at today because he brought me back to record my first album, God's Love. And those were all songs that I wrote. And I still sell that album. In fact, God's Love is a song that people still love. I've redone it and it's on my new album. And there's a couple others that I redid. But that was a time span of only about a year from me not taking the one deal that didn't come together. And God had something else better for me. As that progressed, we later on started traveling around this circle of Nevada, Arizona, California areas that I could drive and go sing. That's what I did. And as the Lord gave me more songs, I sang. And then later on, Dave and I ended up moving. Our life took a change. His job changed, and God moved us to Nashville 22 years ago now. From that point, God blew the doors open. It blows my mind today of what all God has done in my life in the music business, brought me together with people that I just don't even, it's hard for me. I have to pinch myself sometimes just to say that, wow, God, you love us so much and you put these things in our hearts and the desires that we do. I've been connected with a group of Music City Christian Fellowship has been a phenomenal blessing in my life. The people that I've met and the people that are friends of mine that I'm like, man, how does this happen? It happens because God's grace and love and his desire for our life. He had this plan. I didn't know what it was, but he had it. And I have met the people that I sang for the very first time. And now every year I get to sing on the Grand Ole Opry stage with the Sunday Morning Country group, my friends, so many friends. And every year I get to sing there. I'm like, wow, God, if I would have taken that detour, I may not have been able to do what I'm doing today. Isn't that amazing how we think, oh, we missed an opportunity. Did you really? Maybe you didn't. Maybe God's got the better thing if we just keep looking and keep going and doing what he says or calls us to do. He'll open the doors when they're ready and when you're ready. You may not be ready. I wasn't ready back then, but as the years went by and singing at different places that I've sang, getting back to Nashville and singing and doing the opportunities that I have, which he's opened so many more opportunities since I've been here. He's put me in a group that I've met some wonderful people in Lebanon, and that was beautiful time of life learning. It was a different group of gospel singers and some really good people that God introduced me to. And then I've been part of USA GEM, which is, there's a long name for that, but it's another group that has wonderful gospel people in that and Christian people that do Christian country and Southern gospel and different stuff. So I've been part of that group now we've been here 22 years. So it's been about 20 years that I've been a part of each one of those groups. I just started as an individual part of that, but God's over the years brought other things too. I'm on the board and different things like that. If you're faithful in the small things, he'll bring bigger and better things to you if you're faithful in the small things. So if you're faithful in the things that you do, you think, oh, this is insignificant. It's not. It's not. It is all part of God's plan. And if you do it with the right mind and right heart, God will bless those things.
What you're saying is so true. God doesn't waste anything in our life. I can look back over my life and see how he's built on one experience after another. Those experiences, God is using those today. I think, Bev, your story is such a beautiful reminder of how God can take the areas in our life that just feel broken and shattered into pieces, and that he can create something brand new out of it. This has just been so good. But next time, guys, you got to come back because we're going to talk more about her music and media ministry, from award-winning songs to national TV broadcasts and a powerful testimony of healing God did in Bev's life. You do not want to miss that. That is going to be powerful. We've already witnessed through her testimony the wonders that God's already done in her life, but I promise you it gets even better. So you've got to come back and tune in to episode 2, okay? We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in to Witness the Wonder. If today's story encouraged you, share it with a friend and stay connected at witnessthewonderpodcast.com. You can also follow us at Witness the Wonder on your favorite social media platform for updates and behind-the-scenes moments. Let's witness the wonder together. Remember, God is always at work in your story.